August 13th is definitely a historic day, and all I can say about it is wow. And it is wow because of this. President Trump here announcing that he has brokered a peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Now, this is, again, this is historic. This is monumental. If you don't think so, you may not know that much about the Middle East, or you may simply hate Trump or Israel and be blinded by that fact. But it really is monumental to see Israel signing a peace deal with a major Arab nation. It's the first peace deal since it signed one with Jordan in 1994. The only previous arrangements and peace deals that they had were with Egypt and then Jordan. So adding a third UAE is a big, big deal. Now, this reveals a number of things. Number one, it's an exemplar of the changing dynamics in the region. When President Obama signed the Iran deal, or the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that basically gave Iran a free hand. It prevented them, maybe on paper, from pursuing a nuclear bomb within 20 years, but it said nothing about their ballistic missile program. It gave them a whole lot of cash and opened up some cash reserves that had been locked in foreign assets. But it basically gave them a huge war chest, and they have used that war chest to fund organizations like Hezbollah or Hamas, or cause problems in Yemen. And so Iran's neighbors rightfully became terrified that they would exert influence, that it would exert influence on them, just like it has done in Iraq. And so countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia suddenly realized, well, perhaps the enemy of my enemy is actually my friend. And so they have engaged in sort of back-channel relations with Israel. There's been a lot of rumors about UAE and Saudi Arabia helping Israel with some intelligence things, or sharing intelligence information about what's going on with Iran's nuclear program. But that is historic. Now, it's historic also for one more reason, and there are definitely a lot, but one more that I want to highlight. It's historic because when President Trump moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, so many critics of the president and of Israel and just in general of American foreign policy said that this would be a barrier to peace, that no Arab nation would normalize anything with Israel. They would want nothing to do with the country because this was simply unfair what Israel was doing. Now, this is, it's been proven totally wrong. The UAE clearly doesn't care that the American embassy is in Jerusalem. And a lot of that is filled with politics. You have probably heard about East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem. These are all political terms that take a lot of time to unpack. And for example, one of the ones that simply is relevant here is East and West Jerusalem. Countries like Russia recognize West Jerusalem as Israel's capital, but a lot of parts of so-called East Jerusalem are southwest of the city of Jerusalem. So again, a lot of political terms, but what is important is the actual real deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates that will allow opening of embassies, direct flights, bilateral trade, tourism. It's simply a huge piece of news for the Middle East, because it's showing that a lot of countries are simply interested. They're perhaps tiring of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Perhaps they feel that the Israeli-Arab conflict is, again, it's just time to end that because it's no longer worth it for any of those countries. And this is a historic day. So there's a lot to talk about. But from a Canadian context, most important, from a Canadian context, the question is, should and will Canada move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Now, again, a lot of the same critics said, a lot of people in the House of Commons or in the news media, when the Conservatives put that as part of their party platform, and as the leaders for the everyone running for the Conservative leadership, when they said that they would move the embassy, a lot of critics came out of the woodwork saying this would cause problems. But clearly it does not cause any problem. Putting a Canadian embassy in West Jerusalem, which for all intents and purposes will remain part of Israel, has remained part of Israel in any proposed peace agreement, and is the recognized capital of Israel by countries like Russia. There's absolutely no danger, and this is evidence because the UAE would not sign diplomatic relations with Israel if they felt that that was simply a barrier. So clearly some big news, big happenings in the Middle East. I'd love to talk more about that, but what do you guys think? Do you think Canada will and should move the embassy? I think it should. Perhaps we'll make another video about why, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. What are the pros and cons? So please do leave that in the comments. For True North, though, I am Sam Eskenasi. I hope you enjoyed this video. You learned a little bit about the Middle East, and we'll talk again later. Thanks so much.